everyone. For those of you I don't know, I'm from Seattle, so I saw at least one Seattle from there. And I'd love to also know, we're going to be using the chat box a lot today. So while I kick things off, I'd love to hear from you all about what your leadership experience is. And that can be another great way to just understand the diversity of our audience that we have here. So where you're from, what your leadership experience, and with that, again, warm welcome to you. I'm excited to spend this next hour together today. And before we get started, a couple just general sort of best practices, ways that we can make the most out of our time together. In case you aren't already, my ask of you is to be present as much as possible. If you're able to shut down email, set that phone aside, I promise it's that much more fun when you can be fully engaged and interactive with our time together. And to know that through the chat box, there's truly no right or wrong in our answers, just all meant to be learning amongst one another. So no pressure. This is a judgment-free zone. Again, we are all here to level up our leadership. And more importantly, my wish is that you have fun along the way. Okay. So I'd love to just do a quick pulse check right now as well, and have a show in the chat box of who here has already heard of Amala Vida before today's webinar, meaning, is this your first webinar or engagement with ALV? Simple yes or no, or I know a lot of you have attended other sessions, or I've seen in the participant list, coaches, clients, former clients. So I think we've got a wide range of folks here. And yeah, I see some variety with a lot of first timers as well. So welcome. And I'm also going to ask Jill to get going with our first poll right now. Nothing fancy, but leadership is one of the main components of what we at Amala Vida focus on. And I'd love to hear from you all who attended last week's webinar by Coach Jen on great leaders aren't born, they're made. So simple yes or no there. This will be fun. A lot of our leadership focused attendees like to attend a lot of our sessions, and you'll see through our content, especially if you attended Jen's, that we always focus on different areas, but we also deepen the learning in others. So I think you'll have a lot of fun as well, diving into assessments and style in a different way if you did attend Jen's webinar. So we'll leave that going for a little bit longer. Again, if you are newer to Amala Vida, just like the slide here says, we are all about loving your life in all aspects. So whether that be career or leveling up your leadership or your health and wellness. And before I move further too, you're going to see across some of these slides, thank you, Jill, that I've got a consult scheduling link that's going to be popping in and out. And so we'll talk more about this at the end with our Q&A, but I do want to make sure for any of you who are interested in that additional leadership coaching support, by attending today's webinar, if you sign up for your free consultation using that link, we'll make sure that you receive a coupon code to ultimately get your first session free if you sign up for a coaching membership. So we'll make sure to throw that in the chat box as well. Big thank you to Jill for that. And let's dive in further. I'd love to introduce myself for those of you who I am a newer face to. So for me, I have been in the advertising space for the majority of my corporate experience prior to joining the Amala Vida team. And within my role in advertising, client services, one part of my role was the leadership and professional development coaching of my teams. And while it was one small part of the role, it was truly my favorite part. And so that's what ultimately led me to join Amala Vida. I found it so fulfilling to be able to 100% focus my time on what I love, and that's supporting my clients in their growth and development, whether it be in the leadership space professionally, but also in how that leadership translates more broadly, personally as well. So I'm excited to explore how I can develop your own leadership style today. So here's what you can expect. And I'm going to go ahead and go off screen for our content here, and I'll make sure to come back on for the Q&A. But with that, we've got a lot to tackle. This is really intended to scratch the surface. Again, we've got a lot of other great content and webinars in the future, as well as coaching opportunities. So my hope, though, is that you at least take away one thing from today to keep leveling up your leadership in the future. So we're going to talk about those leadership qualities, and then we're going to explore how that translates to your different personality type. And we take that ingredient, we also explore the different definitions of leadership styles and how you can adapt your style based on your personality and preferences to come up with an approach that's uniquely you, that's going to work best for you. And when we do that, we are able to improve our communication and collaboration, which are two main themes that I often explore with my leadership clients. And we'll make sure to wrap up at the end with about 10-15 minutes for Q&A. But again, interactive session, feel free to plop in your thoughts in the chat box along the way, and as much as possible, I will also explore any other questions or thoughts that I can address throughout our time. Okay, so defining your leadership qualities first. I'd love to get that chat box interactivity going now, and you all came here today with one or maybe more particular reasons in mind. And so I'd love to understand, in what ways would you like to level up your leadership? So what would you like to achieve by being here for today's webinar? Perhaps there is a way that you want to become a better leader. So go ahead and reflect on that, and even better if you put it in the chat box, because just like we do in a coaching session, I always start each session with my clients by identifying that goal or topic in mind, what we want to achieve. And that ensures that we're able to really hit that target once we have defined it. So I'd love to hear from you all, and we'll do my best to cater the remainder of our content accordingly. So we're starting now with creating that vision of our ideal leadership style. And we're going to do that by understanding what some of the key qualities are that make for a good leader. Awesome, and seeing some responses come through there. So feel free to keep getting your thoughts going while we explore what really defines a leader. And these are a few principles that I like to keep in mind. So first off, title versus group impact. It's not just about position. So leadership, we often define it in two different ways. The first usually being the type of role. So it's a perhaps supervisor or manager title, someone's formal role within an organization. But then the second category of group impact is based on the function that that leader serves and the outcome of the team that they are leading. And so I really like this as a more productive way to define leadership based on outcomes. So that way we're not tied to just any particular roles of people being leaders. We are all leaders when we want to be. We don't just have to be those people managers or those supervisors. And next we've got perception versus reality. So whether or not you think you're a leader, it's critically important that others see you as a leader as well. You know, of course, your thoughts matter. How confident you are in your abilities is going to impact how you handle situations effectively. But we really want to make sure that there isn't a giant gap between that perception versus reality. And we're going to talk a bit later around personality assessments and feedback. And those are really great ways to ensure that those two are aligned. And lastly, leaders are cultivated. So understanding that there are similarities and gaps between your personality characteristics and how those are related to leadership success can really help give you some insight to lead effectively and give you some opportunities and next steps to really continue to grow no matter where you're at as a leader today. So we've talked about those keys to think in mind, and I'd love to hear from you all now that you've shared your goals around today and your leadership. If you've ever had a poor experience with a leader, a boss, or a manager, a simple yes, no, or if you've got more context, what made it a negative experience for you? And thank you, Kimberly, for getting it going there. Because we want to explore this area like two sides of the same coin. These negative experiences are also going to give us great insight into what the important qualities in leadership are when we see that they are absent. Yes, Betsy, micromanage. That's definitely one that I hear a lot as well. And oh, I hate those bus thrower unders. That's the worst. So we probably all have had an experience, and there are going to be different aspects that just really resonate more negatively with us for others. But my wish for you is that you see here that there are themes in terms of our responses here. There are themes in terms of poor management, just like there are themes in terms of great leadership. Talking the talk, but not walking the walk. Absolutely. So now let's go ahead and compare to the flip side, those positive traits of a great leader. So let's have some fun with this, and I'd love to get your thoughts. Maybe there is somebody else around you who already inspires you when you think of the qualities of a great leader. But let's go ahead and hear now. What's the flip side? We've talked about poor experiences. What makes a great leader so great? Yeah, supportive tools you need. Absolutely. My wish for you all is that you're able to draw from some personal experiences as well with great leadership. And I'd love to hear what are those pieces that resonate with you. Ooh, asking provocative questions, just like what a great coach does, right, Betsy? If you don't know Betsy, she's another coach on our team. So it's awesome to have her insight here as well. Okay. So we've got a solid brainstorm list that's brewing here. Now let's go ahead and compare that list to a list of common leadership qualities. Okay. So this list is by no means all inclusive, but in terms of my research, as well as other resources I've seen, what I hear from my coaching conversations with leadership clients, a lot of these characteristics come up. And some of these, whether in their exact form or similar to, I've seen come through in this chat box with you all today. So passion, a common quality, really having that true, authentic enthusiasm for your company, for your team, for your mission. Integrity, we think of doing the right thing, no matter what, even if it maybe isn't the best thing for the bottom line. Communication skills. So in order for leaders to effectively motivate and instruct and discipline and take charge, communication is a core part of that. Loyalty, really, those best leaders I think of are ones where that loyalty is reciprocal. They are in service to us just as we are in service to them as their team. Decisiveness, being a good leader, isn't just about being empowered to make decisions. They're able to take risks and hold themselves accountable, even with big decisions. And empowerment, they have faith in their ability to develop their employees and to empower them to be able to act independently. That was another theme that we saw coming through here versus that micromanager. Charisma, being friendly, approachable, well-liked, just that sort of positive energy that really resonates. Transparency, being able to win the trust of our teams. A lot of ways that we can do that is by being our authentic, vulnerable, and open selves. And motivation, that's also key to being an effective leader, to be able to inspire. And so not only are they passionate, but they know how to light that spark in others as well. And then I've got this broader bucket here of managerial competence. So I wonder if any of you relate, but I've often seen and heard of as well, so many companies where they create leaders by building people up who are really strong individual contributors. They're good at their role, but then can they inspire, motivate, mentor, direct others? That is not always the case without it being cultivated. You think of, for example, most athletic coaches have backgrounds as players in their respective sport, but the most winning players aren't always the most successful athletic coaches. They must possess other qualities and they must be cultivated to learn and grow over time. Exactly. People skills aren't always there when they are promoted that way. So why does this matter? Well, personality fits in as well. So we're going to explore now. We have defined some qualities, but we want to understand how our personality fits into it as well. Okay, so who you are determines how you lead. We know it can be cultivated, but we also know that we all have our unique personalities and experiences that define who we are. And there are a lot of statistics out there that show it's a pretty high number. I've seen nearly 2/3, if not more, of people in leadership positions fail due to their inability to build and maintain a team. And self-awareness of who you are, understanding that personality is one of those key ingredients to success. And so assessments are one of those ways, and feedback another way that we close that gap between that perception and reality of how you see yourself and how others see you here. And so as we talk through these different examples, I'd love to hear from you all in the chat of any personality assessments or feedback tests that you have tried, whether it be the ones on this list or others. And bonus points if you share a way that you applied those learnings. So human beings, we are all unique. Our actions aren't always predictable. So it's not like having an assessment of our personality or feedback is going to 100% define what our leadership next steps are going to be. But again, it's a helpful part in the process. So starting with 360s, as part of Amalavita's Elevate program, we have our own 360 evaluation process. And 360s are a common part of other organizations as well. So I'd be curious to hear if any of you have experience with this in your roles, where we're sourcing feedback across all levels, whether it be your direct reports, your peers and colleagues, your managers, and others. So that way we can really use that to understand where everyone else's perception is and feedback to identify your blind spots as well as your opportunity areas to move forward. And it doesn't have to be super fancy. We've got a quick 5 minutes that can be really insightful when we pull across so many different levels within the organization. And now we did that poll earlier around who attended Jen's webinar. And with that, I have one more poll, Jill, I'd love for you to tee up, where we ask out of you all, I'd love to know who has completed Amalavita's leadership assessment. So this is another great personality type leadership assessment to have some fun with and understand what type of leader that you are. We have two main buckets: people first or get shit done. And that one is another quick sort of 15-minute assessment that can be a really great supplement to any of the other methods that I'm seeing come through that you may have had experience with. So simple yes or no in that poll. And as we keep going, for those of you who aren't aware of some of these other areas, there are also Hogan assessments. Through that assessment, we're looking both at the bright side and dark side of how you show up and your motivations, values, and preferences to help determine your leadership style. We also have DISC, and that looks at different components of your behavioral style. That acronym defines by decisive, interactive, stabilizing, and cautious. So that way we take into account how you tend to approach problems, how you interact with others, how you pace things in your environment, and your preference for established protocols. And okay, based on those poll results, it looks like the majority of you have not completed the leadership assessment yet. So we'll make sure throughout today, for those 76% who haven't, we've got a link to that assessment that you're welcome to take at any time. And that can be a great way to see. I'd love to know who here is people first versus get shit done. So we'll plop that in the chat later on. And next up, discovery insights. So this is one that my most recent agency had used most recently. And that's another model to understand style, strengths, and value. What I really liked about it was that it was very colorful. So understanding how and why people behave based on 4 different quadrants of fiery red or sunshine yellow, earth green, and cool blue. So that was a nice visual to go along with the assessment. And I've seen here that many of you have had experience with MBTI, the Myers-Briggs Type Finder Inventory. So another 4 personality type theory where we're looking at your personality based on that level of introversion versus extroversion, sensing or tuition, thinking or feeling, and judging versus perceiving. So many ways that we can get around this, learning about ourselves. And also it can be so helpful when you learn about your teams. So yes, just like M. Steiner has mentioned, when we've got those differences in our styles, it can make things awkward. And it can also help us to understand where there's opportunity to adapt our approach where possible to at least make it a little less awkward along the way. Okay. So I encourage you, again, if you want another fun assessment, check out that ALV leadership assessment. And since many of you, about a quarter of you, have already taken that, we're going to shift gears now and do a little bit more exploration based on that discovery insights model as an example. So that way you can see how you might use one of these personality and leadership assessments to understand with and better work with your teams. All right, and no worries if you can't read all the little text here. The main point is to understand those visuals with the discovery insights. So again, a benefit here is that having this visual, it makes it pretty easy to grasp and recognize everyday behaviors of those around you by using this assessment. And so how I used to use this in my work as well is understanding my sort of tendencies and how that compared to someone else's. For one, to not take things personally if our style was different, and 2, to be able to adjust to yield a better communication result. So for those of you that are familiar here, I tend to be pretty heavy towards the cool blue and earth green pretty equally. So I'm much more analytical and structured, but I also really am focused on relationships. And then further down for me is the fiery red, and then less so on the sunshine yellow. So for me, working with others who were the fiery red, really helpful to know, because unlike me, who enjoys a lot of time to reflect and plan for next steps, who also wants to take the time to explore relationships and what's going on in life, I would know when I'm interacting with the fiery red, like they just want to get it done, business like, move forward quick and fast. Again, it's nothing personal, but that's just their preference. And so that takes a lot less, again, of that sort of taking things personally element out of it. And it just helps ensure that they're hearing me when I'm using their language and vice versa. So this is just one example of how we can shift and adapt, which is one of the leadership sort of qualities that we will talk about, and is actually a leadership style in itself that we will explore shortly. So whichever tools you use, my wish for you is that you use these as a guide to remind you of who you are, what you're about, and to be able to be mindful of the preferences of those around you. And one other thought with any other preference and test is just to know that we don't want to box anyone in either. Everyone is unique. So other people who might also be equally blue and green like me, it doesn't mean that we are the exact same person. Obviously, we're going to have our nuances there. That's going to be helpful to keep in mind. Okay. And I'm seeing here that Charles wants to be red. So knowing those qualities of a red can be that step one towards actually working towards that. Okay. So now let's go ahead and explore several leadership styles so that way we can understand which style best describes how you are or who you want to be. All right, I'm also seeing a question in the chat about where to access that Discovery Insights test. My guess is there are probably some of those color assessments that are free online. Otherwise, it is part of a bigger sort of assessment and program that they have a Discovery Insights website, all of that. So that might be something that you could explore. And thanks, Jill, as well, for the leadership assessment. Okay. Different leadership types. These are common ones here. Again, this is not meant to be all inclusive though. These are just a handful of core different styles that are based on different researchers, though you'll see that there are other experts and resources that define these things and maybe just word them differently. Just like, for example, Amalavita does with our last two on this list, people first and get shit done. So for each of these now, I'll go ahead and describe what it is, as well as a pro and con with each. And I'd love for you to think about and plop in that chat at any time, which of these styles do you feel like best describes you? So first off, transactional leadership. I like to think of it simply like a transaction. I give you this and you do this in return. It's very straightforward. And a pro of it then is that it eliminates any sort of guesswork and confusion because tasks are clearly outlined with this leadership style. But one of the cons here is that when it's very transactional, it can mean that creativity and innovation can be stifled as a result. Now, transformational leadership, these are leaders who seek to change or transform then the business or the people that they're leading. So being inspirational, being innovative. And a pro with this style is that these leaders can establish a high level of trust in order to get employees to rally around that shared vision. But then one of the cons is that this desire to change and be innovative can also, on the flip side, ruffle up some feathers. Servant leadership, That's the motto: serve first, lead second. So this is the sort of approach that is leading to high levels of trust as well. It's boosting morale. Yet a con is that it can be tough to have this sort of approach. And when you are someone who is frequently pushing your own needs and priorities back, that can also come at a cost. Democratic leadership. So this is collaborative, where they are emphasizing working together, actively involving teams in that decision-making process. So a pro here is that creativity and innovation are encouraged among all. So this really leads oftentimes to greater job satisfaction. Yet one of the cons can be that it can take a lot of time to constantly aim for that consensus, and it can be at the cost of other things. And then you've got the flip side of that, autocratic leadership. Think of it like my way or the highway, where it's great that decisions can be made quickly and strategically. Yet the con, employees can feel ignored as a result. Then we've got bureaucratic. So this is a style where you're going by the book, you're checking those boxes. So a pro, there's a lot of stability. It's a systematized approach, but a con is this sort of style can fall into that trap of, this is the way we've always done things, and therefore should just always be. All right, it had been a while since I'd heard this term, but that term laissez-faire, it's the French term that means leave it be. So this is more, as you can imagine, a hands-off leadership approach, where the pro of it is it's leveling, it's giving a high level of trust and independence to empower teams. But then the con is that if those teams that are being empowered aren't organized or self-directed, well, then you can have some chaos that can ensue. And then we've got charismatic. So these are the sorts of leaders that have that sort of magnetic personality. They can unite a team around their cause and get them excited. So a pro is that this level of inspiration can be really great at getting people invested in shared causes. Yet a con here can be that these types of leaders can also get tunnel vision around their focus that might cause them to lose sight of other important issues that crop up. Okay. And then situational leadership. So this idea, while you might naturally align towards one or more of the common leadership types, it's a style in itself to know when a situation calls for a different type of approach. So being adaptable, recognizing that you might tend towards more blue, but need to be red, and flexing that mental muscle, if you will. So being able to adapt to your team, to the organization's needs. The pro here is that adaptability can help you accomplish a variety of tasks and gain consensus with a variety of individuals. But a con of that could mean that could also cause confusion. If you're constantly kind of evolving who you are in your approach, that might also seem like a lack of consistency that could be confusing to others. And then we've got, I love these descriptors here, people first leader from the Amala Vita assessment. So this is really in alignment with more of that servant leadership type. So coaching mindset, someone who's really empathetic, they can be that active listener, yet it can be tough to hold the team accountable. There can be overwhelming burnout, again, when you are putting others' needs consistently first. And then you've got the get shit done sort of leader that could align with several of these other areas. Perhaps there's some element of autocratic, for example. So because of that, you're able to give clear direction. You're effectively able to delegate. Yet in terms of a con, emotional intelligence might not be as much of your strong suit if you're a get shit done sort of type. And that directiveness that can move you forward can also be potentially off-putting to your team. So end of the day, there are strengths and blind spots, opportunity areas across any of these types. All right. And thanks to all for sharing where you stand on the leadership type spectrum. Okay, so we are going to explore how this all relates to our communication and better collaboration now. So we've talked about the qualities that are important to us as leaders. We understand those. We understand our own personality. We've explored what that means in terms of our leadership style or how we lead. And now we're going to put it all together and explore how this knowledge ultimately impacts our communication and collaboration improvement. And why these two areas? Because these are two of the most common key topics that come up in my leadership coaching sessions. And I'd be curious for any of the other coaching teammates here as well, if that also relates to your coaching experiences as well, these themes of that communication and collaboration. Okay. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Daniel Goleman, he's a psychologist who's really well known for his work with emotional and social intelligence. And so he describes the 4 domains of emotional intelligence that make a strong leader here: self-awareness, self-management, empathy, and social skills. And so these areas of emotional intelligence are great ways for us to explore how we can level up our leadership. And as you hear these different definitions, I'd love for you to take some time to reflect on a step that you could take to develop your emotional intelligence based on today. So first off, self-awareness. That piece is essential for the other domains. And that's again why personality assessments, 360 feedback, really taking that time to reflect, or through coaching, having that unbiased third-party perspective to be able to reflect back what we are seeing and hearing, are all key ways to build your self-awareness. And then second, self-management. This is also really key. If you don't know what's going on inside yourself, it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to help others manage what's going on inside of them. So this is all about having the ability to really control your emotions so that they're not getting in the way of your ability to think well, to lead well, to create, to stay focused on a goal, and to move forward. Self-management, definitely a key part of my coaching, not only with my leadership clients, but across the spectrum of health and life as well. Components of managing stress and burnout and other emotions that come from tough situations, definitely key for that emotional intelligence. And then empathy is next. And this requires that self-awareness as well, to be able to tune into other people, to be able to read them effectively. And then lastly, social skills. So this is key to be able to manage relationships and have that solid communication, to be able to effectively influence, and to really build that focus on teamwork. And so again, would love for you to reflect on what ways you might be able to level up your emotional intelligence. And there might be one or more of these 4 areas that stand out to you as your biggest opportunity area. Okay. Now we're going to close in the next couple of minutes here before we move on with Q&A. And as we close, just like in every coaching session, we complete with commitments and accountability in order to put our learning into action and ultimately ensure that we follow through. Because you may have heard that saying that while knowledge is potential power, the true power itself is in the implementation. So I'd love for you all to take a moment to reflect on the questions that I have here. What is one takeaway from today? How will you put this learning into action? By when? Who will hold you accountable? How? And know that I can support you each step of the way. So as you reflect there, feel free for even greater accountability to answer one of those questions in the chat box as well. That is one of the powers of coaching, is when we not only think about what we want to do, but committing to it by writing it down, putting it out there. We can all be a support for one another that way. So I'll give you a moment to reflect there. And last but not least, know that there are many different ways to build your support and next steps. And if additional support through Ama La Vida would be helpful for you to build upon what we talked about today, many different ways to get in touch. So if you are not connected with me on LinkedIn, feel free to connect. I've got my profile name there. You can also email me, sarah@alvcoaching.com. If you have any follow-up questions after today's Q&A. Again, we've got that leadership assessment that I highly recommend to see, are you people first or are you get shit done, and see how you can take those learnings for your next steps. And we've got a lot of upcoming events. For those of you, if this is your first ALV event, make sure you're checking out Eventbrite for our latest events, especially within the next month. We've got some great upcoming leadership content from Coach Betsy and Coach Sherry on topics around effective management, effective feedback, leveling up your leadership, and beyond. So definitely check those out. And then our website, alvcoaching.com, always a great place to learn more. And a consult, that would be another key next step. If you liked what you covered today, if you feel like it would be really beneficial to explore how coaching could further build that structure and accountability and support, then again, by using this leadership Calendly link that is here, if you book a consult today, if you ultimately decide to move forward with a membership, then you'll get a code for your first coaching session free as a thank you for joining today. So that would be a next step. But hey, if you're not even sure if a consult's right for you and you want to learn more, then I definitely recommend going back to our website. It's a super easy process of learning about all the details is step one. Step two, with membership, you can learn more about all of our different coaches to see how we might be a right fit for you. And then step three, you pick your membership model and boom, you're good to go. So I hope that you have a lot of great takeaways here to move forward. I love seeing that we've got one of Sherry's clients here. I also agree that she is very awesome. So we've got a great team here. And with that, we have about 10 minutes left. So I would love to open up this time for questions, and Jill's going to be back as well. So thank you again so much for your time, and hope to see you in some way, shape, or form in the future. And I look forward to you continuing to further define and level up your leadership.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. All right. So the only question that I've seen that hasn't been answered, and I love this one. I'm pretty sure that being a stay-at-home mom has been an intensive training in emotional intelligence. Is there a way to get that across to potential employers?
Ooh, yes, that is a great question. And absolutely. Transferable skills, getting that across, like that is so relevant. So I like to encourage my clients that truly nothing is off the table in terms of shared experiences. I think we can easily get into this box of like what I do at home versus what I do at quote unquote work, but really those lines are blurred and those skills are transferable and they're across all different areas there. And so if you mean how to get that across in terms of like an interview setting, absolutely. Those are the sorts of experiences that I encourage my clients to tap into. And often when we're sharing more holistically about ourselves and our experience, that it's welcome. as well. So I'm seeing in the chat then about in terms of resume, and if any of our coaches or Jill have any other thoughts on this, to feel free to chime in. But I have also encouraged my clients, let's say if, for example, you have, we're calling it a resume gap, where you had a time period of being stay at home, well, then we treat that like another section of a job description, where you are listing out your experience bullets of those skills and experiences that are going to be relevant to a role that you are going after. Because absolutely, it's relevant. We want it to come through and not just seem like that there's a gap there. Yeah, you're welcome, Kimberly.
Sonia, we do. You want to touch on that, Sarah?
Yes.
Sonia asked, do we do any corporate training?
Absolutely. So our training, we've got a lot of different options. So if that's something you're interested in, then I'd say let's absolutely have a conversation to explore next steps. But whether it be workshops on these sorts of leadership topics, absolutely something we do in the corporate space. We also, depending on each different corporate needs, like we can work with you to tailor content accordingly based on your organization's goals, based on the structure of your team. If it's focused on leadership development, then I touched upon, we have our Elevate Leadership program that is often a component that we can incorporate. We also have trainings and focus areas related to the 360 feedback and process. We also have ways that we supplement the sort of content and focus areas that your organization might be piloting. So I'm not sure if our coach Jen is still on for today as well. But again, for next steps, we can absolutely have a conversation to better tailor towards your particular corporate needs. We have a lot of fun being able to partner together on that.
And Sonia, I just chatted you. We can also send you more information on that. If you just want to give me your email, that'd be great. And then Monica, how do you encourage respect across variable leadership styles within the team?
Yeah, see my headband here looking at the video. Great question. I would say that in order, you have to have that holistic buy-in also at the upper levels in order to effectively encourage that sort of respect and learning. And so it can't be in a vacuum where, say, only one or two people do a leadership assessment and nobody else has that awareness or prioritization of that understanding to be able to kind of cross share and learn there. So I always like to encourage a broader assessment of those styles. Depending on levels within your organization, the more buy-in that you can get. And also to be able to tie that back to how that respect and understanding of those leadership styles is going to best support your organization in meeting its goals and objectives. As long as we can align on a common goal and being able to share how that variety in leadership style can support that, can be some ways to really help get more of that buy-in. Thank you for the question. Okay, so a simple question about my LinkedIn. Yes, my name is altogether on LinkedIn, Sara T. Dawson, T as in Tom. Okay. I see some props to Jill for her talk as well. Yeah, we've got a lot of great content that spans across all areas. So we always love to hear when people are able to explore our different content, as well as those complimentary sessions. Absolutely. any other questions? I am not sure. I don't think I missed any. Jill, are you seeing any others as well?
I'm scrolling and scanning, and I do not see any other questions. But of course, again, so much great content, jam-packed session. So I know that questions tend to creep up after. So if anyone has any additional questions, we'll have contact information in the recap email that I'll be sending out tomorrow with the recording. So if any other questions come up, please feel free to reply back and ask us. Or you could take advantage of those, the complimentary consults to see what other questions that you want to have answered. So yeah. Oh, and then Kimberly, complimentary sessions are just for non-members, correct? So non-members for the complimentary consults. All right.
I'll just add to that for you members out there, though, be sure to keep an eye on our events calendar for our members only events, as well as the community Slack channel as well, for our kind of member specific items as well. Don't want you feeling left out there.
Thank you for that reminder, Sarah. Yes. So members, we do have a special members only event coming up, how to not hate networking. And so that is for our members only, but we will be sharing more information on that. And like Sarah mentioned, you can check the Slack channel for more details on that. So yes, we like to take care of our members as well.
Yeah.
And that event is at the end of this month. It's actually coming up. So make sure to RSVP members.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you, Jill. And thank you,
Wonderful.
everyone. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. All right. We have 2 minutes left. Any other questions? Go ahead and share those. Otherwise, you got 2 minutes back in your day. And thank you all so much for joining and engaging and taking the polls and the questions. We love all of that. All of that engagement, all of that feedback is always welcome as well. So thank you all so much. Keep an eye out for that recap email and let us know if you have any other questions.
Bye, everyone. Thanks again.
All right. Bye.